The silence in the west wing of Blackwood Manor was a physical presence, a dense, velvety hush, purchased by generations of old money. In this sanctuary of quiet, Alexander Blackwood IV stood before a floor-to-ceiling mirror of polished obsidian. The man reflected back was the picture of controlled success. His suit, a masterpiece of midnight blue wool, felt like cool water against his skin. Each seemed a testament to the gnarled, knowing hands of an 80-year-old Neapolitan tailor. The platinum cufflinks that had belonged to his grandfather felt like cool, heavy talismans against his wrists. Nestled in his breast pocket was a small, forest green velvet box. Inside, an 8-carat emerald-cut diamond, flawless and severe, rested on a bed of black silk. It was a stone of undeniable, ancient value, much like himself. He had chosen it for its clarity, its absence of warmth, its perfect, icy fire. Isabella Moro was the one beautiful, chaotic variable in his meticulously calculated existence. An art historian with a laugh that could disarm a boardroom, she had thawed the cold, ordered halls of his world. She taught him to see the rebellion in a Pollock splash and the humanity in a Rembrandt portrait. She made the vast, echoing manor feel, for the first time, like a home. Tonight, he would ask her to make it official. He descended the grand staircase, his hand barely grazing the mahogany banister. He found her in the conservatory, a vision in deep crimson silk, heard back to him as she gazed out at the twilight-drenched gardens. The sight of her still caused a slight, almost imperceptible hitch in his breathing. "You look terribly serious," she said, turning with a smile that warmed her coffee-colored eyes. She glided towards him, her dress whispering across the marble, and brushed her lips against his cheek. Her scent of jasmine and orange blossom was the very aroma of his happiness. "A serious night," he replied, allowing a private smile. Dinner was a quiet, pleasant affair. But beneath the easy conversation about her art exhibition and his successfully concluded merger, Alexander felt a current of nervous energy. The box in his pocket seemed to pulse with a life of its own. As the dessert plates were cleared, he dismissed the staff with a discreet nod. The doors closed, leaving them in a golden bubble of light, surrounded by the dark, sleeping forms of orchids and ferns. "Shall we walk?" he suggested, his voice a low murmur. "The night-blooming jasmine should be opening." "Oh yes," she said, her eyes lighting up. "It's my favorite scent in the whole world." He offered his arm, and she took it, her hand resting lightly in the crook of his elbow. He could feel the delicate architecture of her fingers through the fine wool. They walked in comfortable silence, moving from the manicured terraces into the wilder, romantic part of the garden she had designed. The air was warm, heavy with the perfume of roses and damp earth. The sound of crickets provided a soft, rhythmic soundtrack. Above, a pearl of a moon hung in a velvet sky. It was, he thought with deep satisfaction, a perfect stage. It was as they approached her favorite spot, a secluded clearing dominated by an ancient, weeping willow, that Alexander first sensed a disruption in the night's harmony. He stopped, his body tensing. "What is it?" Isabella asked, feeling the change in his arm. He whispered, his focus absolute. It was a sound, a low, murmuring sound, punctuated by a soft, feminine laugh that was both familiar and utterly alien. Isabella's laugh, but that was impossible. Then he saw it. Through the lattice-work of the willow branches, he saw movement. Two figures, silhouetted against the moon-dappled clearing. They were locked in an embrace so intimate it seemed to generate its own heat. His brilliant, analytical mind rejected the image, a trick of the light. But then the moon shifted, casting a stronger, almost accusatory beam into the clearing. The woman was Isabella. Her crimson dress was a dark pool of silk on the grass. Her artfully arranged hair was a wild cascade down her bare back. Her laugh was breathy, filled with a raw, desperate pleasure he had never heard, never inspired. And the man, he was tall, his shoulders broad, his skin tanned, the color of tick, from countless hours in the sun. He wore only worn jeans, and his back, a landscape of taut, roping muscle, was to Alexander. His hands, those large, calloused hands Alexander had seen expertly pruning, prize-winning, roses were splayed possessively on the small of Isabella's bare back, pulling her against him as his mouth found hers in a kiss that was not gentle, but hungry, devouring. Liam, the gardener. The world did not slow down. It shattered. The cricket song cut out. The scent of jasmine turned cloying, suffocating. The moon's light felt cold and surgical, exposing a truth so vile it was almost beautiful in its absolute horror. Alexander stood frozen, a statue in his own garden, his hand still holding Isabella's arm. He felt her stiffen beside him, her sharp intake of breath, a dagger in the silent night. In the clearing, the couple broke apart, startled. Liam turned, his face, usually so placid and respectful, now flushed with passion and a flicker of alarm. Isabella stared over Liam's shoulder, her eyes wide, her lips swollen. Her gaze met Alexander's. For a long, suspended moment, no one moved. It was a frozen tableau of betrayal. Then, time rushed back in. Alexander, the woman beside him, gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The woman in the clearing, however, did not look ashamed. A slow, strange smile touched her lips, a smile of profound pity. Liam, recovering with a speed that spoke of practice, stepped slightly in front of her. "Mr. Blackwood," he said, his voice steady. "I can explain." "Explain." The word was a dry, rusted croak. Alexander cleared his throat, and his voice returned, dangerously quiet. "Explain the principles of photosynthesis. The proper pH for hydrangeas. Please, enlighten me." He dropped his companion's arm, as if it were venomous, and pushed through the weeping willow's branches. The green curtain parted, and he entered the sanctum of their betrayal. The air here was thick, humid with the smell of crushed grass, male sweat, and her expensive jasmine perfume. He saw a half-empty bottle of cheap red wine, and 2 chipped clay mugs, sitting on the edge of the stone fountain. This was their place. Their ritual. He looked at Isabella, really looked at her. The woman he had put on a pedestal was now just a woman, flushed, disheveled, her eyes holding a universe of secrets he knew nothing about. "How long?" Alexander asked, his gaze pinned on her. She didn't flinch. "Does it matter?" "Indulge me." She glanced at Liam, a look of such profound understanding passing between them that it felt like a physical blow to Alexander's chest. "A year," she said softly. "A year." The word hung in the air, a monument to his blindness. 365 days of lies. He had been sharing her. The bespoke suits, the private jets, the 8-carat diamond, they were all just props in a life she was truly living here, in the dirt. Why? The question was ripped from a place deep within him. It was Liam who answered, his voice low and fierce. "Because with you, she's a piece in your collection. A painting on your wall. You look, but you don't see her. You don't know that her favorite poet is Neruda, that she cries at sad movies, that she's terrified of thunderstorms." Each word was a hammer blow, systematically dismantling the image Alexander had so carefully constructed. He knew she preferred Chagall to Picasso, that she took her coffee black. He knew the facts. He had never known the soul. Isabella looked at Alexander, her expression one of weary sadness. "He's right, Alexander. Your world is so clean, so sterile. It's all polished surfaces and perfect silence. There's no room for mess, for passion, for real, dirty, complicated life. Liam, he's alive. He feels the sun on his skin, the earth in his hands. When I'm with him, I feel alive, not like a prized possession, but like a woman." Alexander's hand went instinctively to his breast pocket. The velvet box felt like a brand, burning a hole over his heart. He had come here to offer her a crown, and she had chosen the mud. He laughed then, a short, harsh, ugly sound. "So this is what you prefer? A grubby-handed boy who smells of fertilizer? You would throw all of this?" He gestured vaguely toward the monolithic shadow of the manor, away for a roll in the grass. "Yes," she said, the single word final and absolute. In a heartbeat. The finality of it broke the last of his control. Rage, cold and pure, flooded his system. He took a step towards Liam, his fists clenched. Liam stood his ground, his posture not aggressive, but ready. "Don't, Mr. Blackwood. This isn't about you and me. This is about her choice." "Her choice," Alexander spat. "You think you've won? She's a hobby for you, a rebellion. What will you do when she misses the opera? When she wants a dress that doesn't come from a chain store? When she's tired of living in your hovel? What then, gardener? Will your profound understanding of Neruda put food on her table?" He turned his fury back to Isabella. "And you think this is love? This is a fantasy, a vacation from reality. The moment it gets difficult, the moment you have to deal with real poverty, this door," he pointed back towards the manor, "is closed to you. Forever." He expected tears, pleading. Instead, she looked at him with a quiet, devastating dignity. She reached down and picked up her crimson dress. "I know," she said, her voice steady. "And I am. Goodbye, Alexander." She looked at Liam and nodded. Together, they turned and walked away, hand in hand, disappearing down the dark garden path that led away from his world. Alexander stood alone in the clearing. The night-blooming jasmine now smelled only of decay. The fountain's burble was a mockery. He pulled the velvet box from his pocket and opened it. The diamond, his frozen star, winked up at him, cold and utterly meaningless. With a roar of pure anguish, he hurled it with all his strength. It sailed through the air and landed with a soft, final plop in the dark waters of the fountain. The ripples spread, distorted the moon's reflection, and then slowly faded into stillness. The silence returned. But it was no longer the curated silence of old money. It was the deafening, empty silence of a house that was, once again, just a house. And a man who, for all his wealth and power, had just discovered that the most valuable things in life are as wild, unpredictable, and untamable as a garden left to grow.